I feel like I've been playing my best poker I ever have in the tournament, in this tournament, and the field was the toughest I've ever played against, so to make it this far is just amazing. I'm very, very, very aggressive, somewhat crazy, and I think people know me for that. A lot of people would probably expect that I'm wearing sunglasses to hide myself from other people, but in reality, I'm actually wearing sunglasses because I think people reveal more about how they feel about their hand when they feel like they're not being looked at, and I like to look at people.
When he cracked Barry Greenstein's aces to knock him out of this event in 23rd place, Steinberg asked Barry to sign his book Ace on the River with a special message to Danny's grandparents that he was a very good poker player and would make a lot of money someday.
And he has made quite a bit of money so far at this World Series of Poker Europe main event. The exact amount still to be determined. 10-handed. Action folds around to Steinberg. Steinberg on the button with Queen 10.
I believe Steinberg is with a frequent player program. He earns airline points for every hand he enters.
Well, he's working on a first-class upgrade. A min raise to 40,000 here with Queen 10. Over to Ronald Lee in the big blind with King Jack.
Steinberg is going to put his shades on. I'm going to go get a cup of coffee. And Lon, just let me know what Lee does when I get back.
These guys do work on a very different clock than everyone else, Norman. Lee in third place right now on the leaderboard, not far behind Steinberg. And he'll make the call for 20,000 more.
What happened, Lon?
Steinberg made a raise. Lee made a call. We're going to the flop.
Thank you.
All right, here is the flop with Steinberg trailing Lee's King Jack. The flop is Queen 4 for Steinberg. Flops queens up to take the lead. Lee missed. He checked it.
Steinberg's got a bet here. He'd hate to check and see an ace or king peel off on the turn and not know if he's fallen behind.
Steinberg reaching for chips, which is a precursor to actually what he will do. He does bet 40,000.
Remember in baseball, they used to call Mike Hargrove, Lon, the human rain delay?
Yeah, that's right.
You should see Lee with a Cheesecake Factory menu. It takes him 45 minutes to figure out what he wants to order. This has got to be a fold, no?
Well, he's got an overcard to the board. And he's got moxie. He calls.
When this hand began, I believe Steinberg was clean-shaven. A loose call there by Lee.
All right, the turn card. An ace of hearts. Lee with a Broadway draw now, but Steinberg is still best, and Lee checks quickly.
The ace might slow down Steinberg. But again, as you've mentioned anyway, Lon, Steinberg, a pretty deliberate player. But you know, when you're in your 20s, time is on your side. It doesn't matter.
He'll be in his 30s soon if he doesn't make a move here. He does check. All right, so they'll see a river card. 10 of hearts, and Lee got there. He rivers Broadway.
See, if you fall asleep on Ronald Lee, he will hit runner on you.
And now Lee reaching for chips with the best hand.
Boy, where did that hand come from?
No kidding. That snuck up on everyone. So with the best hand, Lee bets 106,000. Steinberg improved on the river to a better two pair than he already had.
Danny Steinberg right now thinking, what can I beat? He can't beat an ace. He can't beat a flush. He can't beat a straight, though I doubt he could put Lee on King Jack. But it's just another 106,000 to get a peek at Ronald Lee's hand.
Two of the big stacks jousting. Steinberg with queens up, but he makes the fold.
Good fold.
Ronald Lee takes that pot. He could not get Steinberg to pay him off on the river.
Sorry, it was a really tough decision.
Steinberg managed to limit the damage in that hand with a good fold, but Ronald Lee does climb back into second place. We're still one away from our final 9. Just around the corner from the casino at the Empire, Chinatown. Some of the best food in the city within walking distance of the poker tables. A hunger for the final table is the only thing on the minds of our last 10 players. Folded over to Dan Fleischman. He has pocket trays. And he will come into the pot with 48,000. Over to Roland DeWolf. DeWolf in the small blind with ace-king.
177 total.
Roland re-raises to 177,000.
177? Where'd he get that number from? Is that how many chandeliers there are in the Buckingham Palace State Dining Room?
Maybe so. So folded back to Fleischman.
And Fleischman appears to be counting out 177,000 chips. This could take a while.
Fleischman with his pocket trays makes the call. So he'll go heads up against Roland DeWolf's ace-king.
The chip leader looking to give Roland DeWolf a headache.
two big stacks. Better tread very lightly around each other. Here we go to the flop. Jack 10-7. DeWolf picks up a Broadway draw, and he checks.
Surprised he checked. A continuation bet there might have just secured this pot.
Fleischmann has the best hand with the trays and bets $115,000.
I like the way Fleischmann's playing this hand.
Just to be fair, I have a 5K side bet that we're going to finish this level.
I wish he'd talk a bit less.
Roland DeWolf with 2 overcards and the draw.
All on 5.
Needs $115,000.
You got it.
He says fold.
You got it.
You got to fold.
Fleischmann had never cashed in a World Series event before this one, but he's making his mark here in London.
That would have been funny. Well, it wouldn't have been funny if that was an angle. There you went. Oh, I didn't throw my cards in the back.
So Fleischmann's willingness to bet and talk wins him that pot against Roland DeWolf. And with those chips, Dan Fleischmann now becomes the first player to crack the 2 million chip mark. Ronald Lee still in second place. Steinberg now in third. Inizan still in desperation mode under 300,000 chips. Who will be our 10th place finisher? Action right now on Brian Powell in first position with pocket kings.
Boy, Jim Morrison's had a lot of big hands. This guy looks like he's about to break on through to the other side.
He sits with 500,000 chips, just 3 shorter stacks at this table. Trying to figure out how to maximize those kings. He's going to raise it up to 57,000, almost 3 times the big blind. And that will get a number of players to fold behind him. Ronald Lee with ace-jack even folds. Now to David Peters, a poker pro from Toledo, Ohio. He lays down jack-deuce. Roland DeWolf with a pocket pair makes the call. Inizan lays down. Over to Fabrizio Baldessari in the big blind with queen 10.
I don't think Baldessari can resist 5-1 on his money here. Just 37,000 into a pot of 174,000.
And yep, he does indeed make the call, and he'll be one of 3 players to see this flop.
I'm going to back Brian Powell on this one.
Good idea. Here is the flop, and a great idea as Powell flops a set of kings. Baldessari with a straight draw.
And now Baldessari, Lon, can't resist the semi-bluff.
Baldessari first to act.
Very nicely toned skin.
125,000 now to Powell, sitting with his set of kings.
Powell is sitting pretty here. He could smooth call, he could shove, he could min raise. That's also known as love me 2 times.
Powell, love to see that flop. And after Baldessari made it 125,000, well, Powell just smooth calls. Roland DeWolf now with his 7s.
He's thinking about it.
Well, he's got to be careful. Not only do you really want to make the final table, you want to make sure you have some chips to play with once you get there. So Roland with a tough decision.
I don't think it's that tough. If he calls here, I will have the Queen's security detail escort him to Scotland Yard for gaming reformation.
You were right. He did fold. So Baldessari and Powell heads up to the turn.
Gut shot draw against top set.
Turn card. 10 of diamonds. Baldessari pairs his 10, but he's way behind.
Baldessari in for a dime, in for a dollar, and now with a pair to go with his draw, it looks like he's going to fire once again.
Baldessari keeping the pressure on Powell. Powell just drooling right now after that bet of 170,000 from the Italian.
Come on.
And all in from Powell.
No smooth call this time.
No. Powell needs every chip he can get.
And Baldessari caught in an awkward spot. He'd be getting 6.5 to 1 on a call here, but I don't think he can make it. Would Brian Powell bluff shove here? You got to doubt it. Baldessari already has more than a third of his chip stack into this pot, but if he folds here, he'll still have 30 big blinds to work with.
Quite a difficult decision for the Italian poker pro. Baldessari does lay it down, and Powell wins that pot.
Brian Powell, light my fire.
You did a good fold. You made a good fold.
Kings?
3 kings.
Powell takes a nice pot from Baldessari.
You'll see it on the broadcast anyway. What's it like to flop top set? Feels good.
The 2010 World Series of Poker Europe is brought to you in part by the official WSOP game on Facebook. Play online now. For details, go to WSOP.com/Facebook. And FullTiltPoker.net. Learn, chat, and play with the pros.
Back inside the casino at the Empire, we are just one elimination away from our final 9 and a well-deserved break for our players.
10 players trying to get down to 9. It's musical chairs and nobody's getting up.
Folded around the table to Nicholas Levi. Not far from being the short stack, ace tray, but he does lay it down. Baldessari will sit this one out. Brian Powell now. Powell looks down at 2 10s.
I think the only way you can get better hands than Powell's been getting is if you shop duty-free.
So Powell, with that big pocket pair, a raise to 51,000. Danny Steinberg with queen 6 of clubs.
In the cutoff. Steinberg has an inner clock. If he hasn't played a hand in 7 minutes, an alarm goes off. Plus, he's just not going to play it, Lon. He's going to re-raise it and slide on those Erik Estrada shades.
Being very deliberate as usual. And with the raise in front of him, he does make the re-raise, Norman. You're right, to 126,000. More frequent flyer miles for Steinberg. Over to Ronald Lee now. Lee, the second biggest stack at this table with ace-king.
Ronald Lee has a different type of clock, Lon. He counts to 500 and then decides how he will act.
Powell, the original raiser, would love to see Ronald Lee go away.
Lee with the biggest stack of these 3 players. He has just a few more chips than Steinberg.
But he's got a real hand to play. And he does re-raise it to 285. Fleischman folds, so now back to the pocket 10s and Brian Powell.
Powell doesn't look like he wants to go anywhere. He's got a good hand. Powell knows Steinberg is capable of making a move, and he knows Lee knows Steinberg might be making a move and simply forbet it to knock Powell out. If that's the case, and of course it's not because Lee has a big hand, Powell might shove here.
Making the final table on all these players' minds, and that can affect decisions. The 10s go into the muck.
And again, a Danny Steinberg raise forces out pocket 10s like we saw happen with Nicholas Levi.
So now with the queen 6 suited, does Danny Steinberg want to joust with Lee?
I don't know how Steinberg can call here, Lon, unless he has a real good health insurance plan.
Well, he's reaching for chips.
Well, I love Steinberg's game. It's pressure, 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 but generally he knows when to take his foot off the gas.
Bluff and good bluff.
I was going to 4-bet, yeah.
Steinberg folded. Lee will take that pot.
I almost stuck it in anyway.
So with that pot, Ronald Lee gets a bit closer to the 2 million chip mark. One of 4 players over 1 million chips. Dan Fleischman leading the way right now, but just barely over Lee. Enazan and Peters, the 2 short stacks.
Americans occupy the top 3 spots. We're a superpower again. USA, USA, USA.
So 10 players remain, and I imagine the adrenaline coursing through all of their veins. Who will make the final table? Who will be the one left behind? Folded over to Baldessari. He lays it down. Now Powell. Does he have another big hand, Norman? King Jack.
By his recent standards, that is not a big hand.
And Powell will fold. Steinberg won't play. London Pro board gets out of the way. Now to Ronald Lee, the second big stack.
Always an expressionless Ronald Lee.
Fleischman folds to David Peters from Toledo, Ohio. The poker pro looks down at ace-7, the short stack on the button.
What a year he's having. Second in a World Series no-limit event, then 136th at the main event, then another final table here at World Series Europe, and now this.
And he is going to raise all in for 342,000. So now to Roland DeWolf in the small blind.
And this would be for about 35% of DeWolf's stack.
Roland with a suited ace-5.
I'm all in.
And he moves all in to isolate Peters. Enazan folds. Peters at risk, but he's ahead in dominating fashion against DeWolf.
By the way, Peters also in 2010 took second place in an F-Tops event online with $152,000. At 23 years of age, he's thriving. All in here against DeWolf. 8 people rooting for Roland DeWolf to suck out.
Yeah, but they all seem a bit disappointed that Roland's behind right now. All right, now the flop. Peters at risk. A 5 in the window pairs DeWolf to grab the lead. Now Peters needs help.
DeWolf looks as if he expected that.